Greetings. Welcome to another episode of heCast, the official podcast of He Changed It. I am Mike Chisholm. As always, very grateful, very excited to be here. I'm having a lot of fun. I'm smiling right now because I'm thinking about the time between the last podcast and this podcast and how much has happened, how much is happening. The enthusiasm for He Changed It is growing. Candy is doing interviews and things like that. I've been asked to do interviews now, and watching this thing grow from a germ of an idea a couple of years ago into where we are right now. It is an unbelievable place to be. We are grateful that you have chosen to be on the journey with us. If you have been here from the start, thank you very much. If you have just joined on, this is your first episode of heCast. Hey, you're in a good spot right now. You're always going to be in a good spot. We're going to hopefully we are going to entertain and inform you. We strive to be infotastic at the heCast here, where maybe you might learn a few things and have a couple smiles and gain some insights, and maybe even dare I say it, perhaps you might be able to look into yourself a little bit and delve into who you are. I don't know if we have achieved that yet, but that is our goal, that we can help men get a little more introspective and really take the next step to going to where they want to go. And if there's hurting and there's things that are happening where you're in yourself, that we can encourage you to kind of explore the idea of getting out of yourself and helping yourself in doing so. It's really, really cool to see where things are at. Very cool to dream about where things are going, because those things are starting to connect themselves now. And we're just so grateful. Today, I have a really cool guest that it's going to be on the podcast, who it was spoken about in a previous podcast. One of the previous podcasts you may have seen was a guy by the name of Jeremy Jalapeno. I love saying jalapeno, Jeremy Jalapeno. That's a fantastic name from a fantastic guy. And he spoke about a men's circle that he was a part of that really helped to transform him in his journey to becoming where he was at, his journey to authenticity. Well, today, we've got the guy who actually started that men's circle. And Ganesh Sanjeevi is on here. Because when I heard his story, and he and I had a conversation about how he started this men's group in a place called Nelson, BC. We talked a little bit about Nelson in Jeremy's podcast. I'm born and raised in Western Canada, and Nelson was always known as that quaint little hippie town about 3.5 hours away from where we live. And it is this amazing community that is just unlike any other place I've ever been. It's a place of peace and love, lots of artists, lots of very cool, it's got a cool vibe to it. And we talked about this men's circle that he was a part of. Well, Ganesh is the guy that actually started that men's circle. He's the guy that pioneered some very cool things in Nelson, and he has taken time out of his day to share his story with us. Ganesh, thank you so much for taking time to be here on heCast today.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mike. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here and to speak and share my story and to hopefully help some other men along the way.
Oh man, the pleasure is all ours. Sometimes it takes, it's interesting being the person who takes a first step into something, because there's courage that in making steps to do something new. But then when people see what you're doing and they start to follow you, suddenly it's not just the courage to do something new, but you're also helping others move forward too. And that's kind of a unique thing. You almost, when you start something new, it almost kind of default throws you into a leadership role, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. And it's funny, I've never considered myself a leader, and stepping into this group has really forced me to look at how I lead as a leader. And I've discovered that I'm leading, like I like to inspire from within. So that's been my leading style. And being in a group, in a circle environment like that, it's so easy because I'm just sharing my own vulnerability. And through that modeling, it's creating a container of safety, and other men are feeling more safe to open up within it.
Inspire from within. That's I'm not sure I've ever heard that turn of phrase. When I first heard it, when you said it just now, it got a whole bunch of things opening up to me. Before you get to your story, what does that mean, inspire from within?
I really like for me, my motivation has always had to be intrinsic. I felt in my life there's always been external factors, pressures from society, parents, family, and it's had me doing things for the wrong reason. And finding my own kind of intrinsic motivation, what really inspires me, what drives me, my purpose, that really I feel has meant opening up and able to lead from a place of authenticity.
Yeah. Being authentic, it's funny. It feels almost like I'm 44 years old at the time of this broadcast, and it's such a funny thing. I feel like that we live in a time where it's easier. It's never been easier to be authentic as long as you fit within the lines of culture. But if you don't necessarily fit within the lines of culture, it can be extremely difficult. Like it's sometimes, in some ways, the easiest way for me to be authentic, but also some of the most challenging because some of the fears that are out there. Cancel culture, outrage culture, all that kind of stuff. It's kind of ironic that way.
Yeah, it really is. It's I find like the closer you get to the light, the greater the shadow behind is. That was shared from me by an elder. It's and I find like the closer you get to like creating something larger, something bigger than yourself, you're getting closer to that light, more like closer to who we really are. And as I get closer to that, I'm noticing that the shadow's getting bigger and more of what I may have been stuffing inside is now coming out to the surface, and it's being presented to everyone, like in my community. And it's been great. It's been helping with my healing process, but it's like there's like nowhere to hide at this point.
That's a really interesting perspective. That's going to stay with me all night. The idea that we're getting closer to the light, but yet the shadow behind us is getting bigger, and that needs to be managed, I guess, as well. Let's talk a little bit about your journey, because I want to. It fascinated me, after Jeremy connected us and you told me your story. I'm like, oh my God, there's other people that need to hear this for a variety of reasons. Living in a small community. There's charms to that, but there's also sometimes a lack of infrastructure or facilities, things like that. Can you talk a little bit about what led you to starting the men's group in Nelson, and where did you talk about your journey a little bit?
Okay. It started, I'm 46 now, almost 47 in February. And it started when I was 40, and I hit my midlife crisis right on the dot, like 40. I didn't think it was midlife at the time, because I'm like, that's not now, is it? And it sure enough, everything was happening one after the other. I was just like served with papers for custody court, and then I went through I had lost my job, I broke up with my girlfriend, I had been involved in a motorcycle accident, and it kind of just kept compounding, one thing after the other. And like
all within the span of a year-ish in that time?
I think almost in the span of 5 months.
Oh my God.
Like within the first 5 months, I was actually served with papers on New Year's Eve by the police.
Yikes.
Like at 10 o'clock at night. Like and so that started off my new year. And
wow.
So I just kind of hit the bottom. When I hit the bottom, it was tough, because I had no supports, and I never had supports in my life as a man. I just, I've always been sensitive, but I've never had outlets. Sports were always my outlet. So it's kind of locker room talk. And at that point, when I kind of hit the bottom, I had no choice but to ask for help. And I started looking out for, like, it was first on Facebook. I just reached out to like a community, and then it wasn't enough. And then I just found I found a support group, and it was just an intensive kind of like a CBT training, cognitive behavior training. I'm not sure if you've heard that before. And I did like CBT training, and in that like intensive training in 5 weeks, I met another man who had gone through an organization which is called MKP, Mankind Project.
Yep.
And they have weekend initiations into manhood, and they're a weekend initiation. It's basically puts you through a bunch of processes and guided visions, and it really has you kind of like going deep into yourself and bringing out like the kind of old narratives and the stories that we have. I found myself, I'm using the word you, and one thing we do in our group is we try to speak in I statements, which really brings it back to ourselves. So I'm going to remind myself to do that and to speak in those I statements. And so Yeah, what I found when I kind of hit that bottom there, and I was looking for the supports outside of myself. I went through this MKP, and then when you come back after this weekend, I likened it to going through like a plant medicine ceremony or some Vipassana I've also gone to, and it's just at the end of the ceremony or the experience, I'm was felt like a crystal. I was just wide open, and then they sort of send you back out into your community, and they're like, just be gentle with yourself. And I didn't have, again, I went back out and I had no supports back here. So when most men, when they finish this initiation, they go back into their communities, and there's a band of brothers who've gone through this initiation, and they're all there to welcome him back home and to have a welcome home.
But being from Nelson, that didn't exist. There wasn't anybody. You, in your explanation here, you've brought up a whole bunch of questions. Now you talk about rock bottom. Now, in that 5-month span you're talking about, there must have been times where you thought you hit rock bottom, and then the floor fell out on you again.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Like the worst thing I found was to think when I've hit like a really low, the negative self-talk comes in, and I'm like, "Oh, I can't get any worse than this."
Right.
And then the floor just kind of like goes out from underneath you, and you're just like, you can just keep hitting, like going through the bedrock. And I got to a point where I finally just like decide I gotta stop beating myself up, and I need to like actually stand up and pull myself out of it, because if I don't do it, like who else is going to do it?
And so that's when you started searching for, and you jumped onto social media at first. That was the first place that you jumped onto.
Yeah.
Was the Facebook group that you found, was it effective?
No, so it wasn't even a Facebook group really. I was just putting like random posts out onto my news feed, just asking for support and just saying I was having a hard time.
You were literally crying out.
I was literally crying out to the world at that point. And but that was what I needed. It was the first time I had been asking for help outside of myself. And
As you told me, as you told me your story the other day before, not that wasn't on camera, and it occurred to me then, and it's occurring to me right now. Like I got goosebumps as you said that you just cried out onto Facebook. This is exactly why Ganesh and Shannon started. He changed it. This is exactly why, because I don't know about you, but my Facebook feed has a very broad arrangement of people's opinions, a very broad arrangement of moods, of temperaments. And I think about like, is this I don't, to use a cliched term, is this a safe place for me to throw out some of these soul crying out feelings? And man, I don't know that my Facebook feed is personally for that. I commend you for being able to do that. And I just want to throw out there that is exactly what He Changed It is being built for. It's being built for a place that men, when they are at that place where they need to cry out, I mean, for healthy too, like for maintaining health and things, but to be a safe place to do that. We as men, we don't have a ton of those, do we?
no, we don't have a lot of these safe spaces. And, you know, I'm a sensitive man, so I'm able to like talk to men and talk about how I feel. But like a lot of the men, they're not in those places. They're not in those spaces, you know? And
Yeah.
and it's funny, even if we create the space as I've created the space here, it's hard to bring men out there. Like you can bring the like horse to the water and you try to make them drink, and they're so thirsty, and they're still kind of like, men can be stubborn. It was like, no, I don't want to go there. Like I'm not ready to like deal with these uncomfortable feelings. I'm not sure what's going to be at the bottom of that well.
An extreme hesitancy. And I mean, I think many of us have gone through the situation where we've been vulnerable and we've gotten burned by it. You know,
Really.
we've thrown out trust. Maybe it's to a romantic partner. Maybe it's to a friend that doesn't necessarily share the same ideals or vision as to what friendship is. Maybe it's to a family member where we have been vulnerable and it's kind of come back to bite us in the ass. And I think there's a hesitancy there, and there's also a stigma. I think that is still extreme, the norm, that we just take it, bottle it up, don't say anything.
Yeah, it's hard to share. It's hard to share. I still, I've been going to this circle for 6 years now, almost, like, since we started, and
Yeah.
it's every week I gotta, like, okay, like, am I gonna do this? Like, really? Like, am I going tonight? Like, and I gotta convince, like, and I gotta, like, I'm like, oh, I got so many other things I need to do, and I'll make all these excuses, but I'm like, what's more important than working on myself?
Yeah.
And
I'm going to assume something here, and maybe I'm wrong. Correct me if I am wrong.
yeah.
On those nights that you hesitate the most and you say, oh, you know what, I got better things to do, or I got other things I could do, or whatever the excuse you throw up, a few hours later after the meeting, how grateful are you that you pushed through and did it?
Oh, it's amazing. It's like yoga, right? Like, it's so hard to get me in that door, but after the class is over, I'm just like, it was the best thing ever.
I appreciate you saying that. That's how I feel about those things. When I started, part of my healing path has been meditation, and I'm not a master at any way, shape, or form when it comes to it. But one of the people that helped influence me with that discipline, they said to me, "Look, you're not going to understand this." And you may not even believe me, but there's no such thing as a bad meditation. You may think that you were distracted, you did nothing there's no such thing as a bad meditation, and you need to let that sink in no matter how the meditation goes.
Mm-hmm.
And the process is the process itself sometimes is the solution. I assume that it's like that with the men's group too.
Mm-hmm.
Um
Definitely, yeah. It
Go
is the
ahead.
process that's taking you to the place that you need to be.
Yeah.
Just trusting in that process. Because,
So
yeah.
go ahead.
No, yeah, just trusting in that process, because when we share at the beginning, I never know, like, it's really hard. I have a hard time. I have ADHD. It's really hard for me to focus. And the one thing the groups taught me is to pay attention to what the man's saying. And it's hard because, like, sometimes I'm thinking, okay, what am I going to say when he gets around to me? Like, I want to appear smart and I want to appear intellectual, like, and wise. And I'm just really now just listening to the man and just feeling what he's doing. And when it comes to me, it's the feeling that's there, and the feeling's changing constantly.
Right. You get into that flow state.
Mm-hmm.
That's so awesome. So okay, you reach out on Facebook, you kind of cry out, different things happen. You get, CBT, right? That was the first one. But then you stumble across this, the Mankind Project. Now, when you say you went away and you were in this Mankind Project bubble, this initiation, this extreme experience that took you out of your surroundings, put you into a bubble, and were brought back. Now, geographically, where did you go to do this?
I went to Vancouver.
Okay, so it's like a 7-hour journey from where you are?
Yeah, it was actually a 12-hour journey because it was on the island.
Okay.
And stuff.
Yep.
And and so it was a long drive there, and then the drive back. And when I went here, there was no group of men because we're in the interior, a small community, and that's another thing with living in small communities, small rural communities. It's, we don't have the amenities that they have in the bigger cities. So yeah, I had no group here. And then when I had no group here, I started a group online with 3 other men, one man on the island who was confined to a wheelchair, another man who lived in Squamish didn't have a group, and then another man who also lived on the island. And we met for 6 months. And then after 6 months, I just really wanted something in person.
How would you meet? Like, what will show? You got 3 guys who are meeting online together.
Yeah.
Paint a picture. Is it weekly? What kind of stuff did you talk about? What were those meetings like?
Yeah, it was weekly, and it was through Zoom at the time. It might have been Skype. I can't remember if Zoom was around then. And we were meeting weekly, and there was 3 other men. It was funny. One of the men was a life coach, and the other 2 men were quite wise. Especially, I have a projection or story that the man who was in the wheelchair was very wise. And so I was the younger guy. I was the new guy. And it was pretty much every week they were just processing the, like, shit out of me, like, oh, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to use that language, but they were just processing me, like,
go ahead.
Every week. So I just got this opportunity to just do so much work. And so they got to a point where I'm just like, okay, I would like to share what has been given to me with the other men, and which had me turn around and step into this leadership role and create a group in Nelson.
Okay, so you're processing this stuff. You've got a couple guys you're able to be sounding boards where you establish trust.
Mhm.
They're saying things and it's giving you food for thought. Can you? And I'm putting you on the spot here, but because you were new to this at this point here,
Yeah.
what were some of the things that some of the light bulb moments that showed up early on? Because there's a lot of guys who listen to this and they're at the first time where they're really going into a journey of introspection. Do you remember what some of those first light bulb moments were for you back then?
Um, I, if the one thing that stands out for me is it felt really good to just be seen and heard, because
Mm.
it was the first time in my life where I didn't have to put on this alpha male, like I've got it all together, I know what I'm doing. I could just come there and just say the things I was scared to say to other people and show the sides of myself that I was scared. And those men, they just accepted it. Like it didn't matter what it was. It's just, there was just an acceptance and okay, how are we going to get through this? And that level of acceptance, I don't think I ever had that level of acceptance in my life.
How did that make you feel?
It made me feel seen for the first time. It made me feel seen. It made me feel not broken. And it made me feel like there was hope. There was hope for me.
Wow. Okay. Um, I assume the mental relaxation that you're able to have, it's almost like it's almost like you're truly sleeping for the very first time, or you're sitting in a chair and you're truly relaxing for the first time, but from a mentality standpoint, being able to be that authentic as to who you are.
Yeah, yeah, completely. It was a first, like I've always been an authentic person, but not to that level of like with my emotions and like exact like my insecurities and my vulnerabilities. I could be open about how I felt and just say tell somebody how I felt about them if I didn't like them. But to like go to the point of like, okay, what is it that I don't like about them? Because whatever like I can see in them, there's something with me. We have a saying in our says like if you can spot it, you got it. So if
Right.
there's something that you're having an aversion to or like something that you're pushing away, like that's something inside of yourself that's like that man's there to like share a message for you.
Well, and I think that every philosophy out there, from Christianity to Islam to all the other faiths out there, I think have a similar. Buddhism has a similar sentiment, where if you can, if you can spot it, you got it. Is such a great way to sum up that idea. The recognition that you see is most likely to do with the fact that there's recognition from self, like it because you are it already.
Yeah, it's not bothering the person beside you, but to you, it's like it's really getting on that nerve.
Yeah.
Or to myself, it's really getting on that nerve.
Um, Interesting, the journey already. By this point here, we haven't even started the men's group, and you see you know the need for it already clearly, because when you get back to your community, there isn't anything there from the logistics of the project itself. So, you reach out to these other two guys. They're moving you on this journey to the point where you get inspired to lead a group. Now, if you would have told the Ganesh before making that 12-hour drive to Vancouver Island, that he was going to be, that this was going to lead to him being a leader in his community and changing the lives of many local men. If the guy who was making that drive down there would have heard that sentence, do you think he would have believed it?
No, I think he might have not have. I might have not gone. Actually, that person might have been a fear to step into that role.
Fuck this! I'm not. No way, man. I don't want this.
I didn't sign up for this. I'm just trying to fix my own stuff. And like, I'm starting this group, and we're leaning it towards. I'm trying to support other men and like in my community. But honestly, Mike, like, I was just trying to support myself. Like, I was just starting this group because I needed the support.
Right.
Yeah.
Isn't it cool to kind of note that progression, even though you were just kind of getting started, but the amount of progression that it took to get to the starting line, fucking crazy.
It was a lot of, yeah, it was a lot. Like because I'd started with another man that was in our community and we just kind of printed up some flyers, you know, hey, looking for men to connect with, and had a picture of a man on a mountaintop with the sunrise there. Just like, are you looking to like delve more into your personal work or connect more deeply with men? And we're just putting these things everywhere at the rec center, just on random like posts. And then we rented a space in town, and like every week I'd go and just like metaphorically beating the drum, and like, man, there would be like so many weeks there was nobody there, just me and my buddy, and then weeks where my buddy didn't come, and I was just sitting there hoping someone would come. And it's like, it's really hard to extend your hand and not receive anything back and not even know. It was like such a show of faith to like hope that eventually somebody will come.
Okay, I wanna talk about this point here right now for just a moment, because there's a lot of guys out there who they'll put it out there a little bit, they'll try something, not get a response, and so they retreat it and they turtle right back, and that's the end of that. I think that we've stumbled onto a point here that is worth talking about, in the idea of perseverance,
Mm-hmm.
of it was Rome wasn't built in a day kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, you could have gone 2-3 weeks and said, no, you know what, wasn't meant to be, but you didn't. And I'm curious as to if you were cognizant about that. Did you actually have people in your ear saying, nah, man, it takes a while to build it? Or was that an instinctive kind of notion to you that you didn't even know it, you're on autopilot and you just kept persevering?
Yeah, I just kept persevering. Like tenacity's been like one of my strong personality traits, and to a fault sometimes. Like I can get to a point where I don't know when to give up on things.
Right.
And but I was just I had no choice. I had to keep pursuing this. I needed this support, and there was a part of me that was knowing that there are other men out there. They're going through this. They don't have that support, and like, what are they gonna do when they turn? Like, they're not gonna turn to the outside for help. And if I have something, a structure in place, which is just easy for them to come to, then hopefully we can start pulling one man in at a time.
Well, and that's what you did. How many weeks was it, just you and your buddy, or just you? How long was that in real time?
That was like months. It
Wow.
was like a few months at least.
Yep.
And then we slowly started getting, like, within that few months, a man would show, but then it wouldn't come again. Another man would show, wouldn't come again. And then we had another man come, and they stuck around, would show a little bit more often. And then, yeah, I think it was after about 6 months, that's when we started having about a core of 4 or 5 men, and they really started feeling what was going on here. We could feel the power of what was happening,
Mm.
and those men also had a lot of vision. Like, I'm not going to take full credit for this. Like, I'm an ideas guy, and I know that I have to surround myself with people that are able to like do the things that I'm unable to do. So these men were just stepping into leadership roles, and I just like all of a sudden stepped into this old grandpa elder role, and I'm just like, I was just letting the young bucks like run around and like do the thing. And they were so keen to go do the trainings, get the staffings, and just come back with all like their swords more sharpened, and they're just practicing within our group.
Um, I don't know the answer to this question, so I'm going to ask it. Did you, at this point, as other gentlemen who were coming in who maybe had skill sets that are not yours, did that lead to any imposter syndrome for you,
Um,
or were you past that already?
I think I've been past that, because like within our group, it's like the imposter syndrome. We're just gonna speak of that in the group. I'm gonna speak about how like, oh man, I feel like the old guy here. I feel like I've been doing this, after 2 years. It got to about 2 years, and like these men, they're very skilled facilitators, and
Right.
I've had moments where I'm just like, like I feel like the old guy here. I feel like I should know more. I should have like more skills, and like, but I just recognized my role in the group is to hold space and to create that space. And so without
Right.
me creating that space and holding that space, and without those men doing what they're doing, and for all of us, it's what we want to be doing. Like, the motivation's coming from within to be doing that. Like, I don't have a desire to study all the processes and become really adept at like taking a man through the process and getting him to the mountaintop. I'm just like, I want to just bring the man to the mountain, make sure he's got his backpack and all his gear and everything, and then we're gonna walk it the whole time. And if he's gonna trip and fall, I'm gonna stay there with him, and we're gonna continue when he's ready to go again.
It's a great analogy. And so growing pains along the way, because this thing started to get pretty big for a while there. You ballooned up and then it went down again. You've had a couple contractions and I don't know what the other thing. It's contracted and it's also lowered itself as well. You've had a few of those, right?
Yeah, definitely. We grew in size, and it's because there's always kind of like in the winter to usually grow a little bit more. Men to tend to go into the cave to hibernate and like do their work. And then we had Jeremy, who was a guest on your show. He had a Men in Tubs calendar, and he kind of had Kootenai men posing in tubs, and the proceeds of that went towards our men's group and some men's mental health as well. And after.
I wish I had it in arm reach. I would put up your picture again. We did put it up in Jeremy's episode though, and you were right. You were the cereal bowl.
Yeah, I was in the milky white tub there with the fruit, like all sliced up. Yeah.
How was that? Talk about getting vulnerable.
Oh my God, that was so difficult for me. Yeah, it was very difficult being in that process because it brought up a lot of issues for me. I already have a story or a projection that I'm being portrayed for like my looks, or certain women will see me in a certain way. And then I'm in this tub in a sexy, sultry pose, just perpetuating exactly the image that I don't want to have out there.
Right.
And but it was good. It brought up a lot for me. I got to speak to Jeremy about that, and it was a really good piece for me to like delve into.
I appreciate you talking about that very, very much. Many times when we have experiences where we are faced with something that takes us out of our comfort zone, one of two things happens. We either never do that again and we retreat back into our comfort zone, or we kind of stay in the fire and our comfort zone then gets bigger. It expands for us. Mm-hmm. I'd say you're the latter. Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
The comfort zone has gotten bigger over the last 6 years, significantly.
Yeah, I'm definitely more comfortable in my own self and in my own space. And I'm at the point, like all my conversations that I have with people, they're just at a real authentic level. I just had a friend the other day who's just getting into coaching work, and I hadn't seen him for 8-9 years. And we sat down and we were really even tight, and we sat down and right away, like just sharing a burger, we just got right into it, and just like our heart stories and centered. And I was just right there with the man. And in the past, I would have been so easily distracted. We were at a busy restaurant, it was bumping and happening. And I just realized how far I've come in the last 6 years. It's like that I'm actually able to share whole space and to listen to a man. That was a really difficult thing for me to learn to listen. Because as a man, my story is that when another person's talking, I'm just formulating a response.
Yes. And
for me to just sit there and to listen to the man and then apply his story to my life, like that interaction, there is so rich. There's so much knowledge there waiting for me.
It's freeing too, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't have to try to be somebody, or I can, and I can just discover who I actually am. And that's what this whole process has been, just like a self-discovery of who I am now, because I'm constantly changing, and I'm realizing that a lot of these narratives that I'm just becoming aware of in my life, these are narratives from my childhood, and I'm still living this life believing these things that are like still true, which are not true.
It's a story you're telling yourself.
Yeah. And like half of those stories and narratives, I'm like completely unaware of.
Yeah. I was listening to a podcast with a mentor of mine. His name is Dr. Joe Dispenza. And he was talking about, he actually does a really good job of taking like the philosophy of things like meditation, but also the science of cognitive thinking. And he kind of puts them all together and kind of connects a bunch of dots. At least that's what he does for me. Others may say different, but, and he talked about how sometimes our personalities of us as adulthood are formed on a day in kindergarten where you decide that one day that you're going to be shy, and you make that decision and a subconscious pathway is created. The next day you come back and you're shy that day too. And suddenly you start reinforcing that decision, and suddenly it's your personality. But it was a decision that you made almost on a whim when you were a child.
Mm-hmm.
And as we're adults, we can delve in and we can find some of those subconscious pathways that have been created, which at the end of the day, many times limit us because we think we are a certain way, because that's what we've been telling ourselves for years. And we can actually beat the shit out of those and destroy those pathways.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a lot of what the work with MKP is about, is going there, finding those narratives, and then rewriting those narratives. Because a lot of the work, a lot of the core wounds, when a man is speaking of something that's troubling his life, we have processes where we can go to those core wounds and be like, so what's the feeling right now in your body? Where are you feeling it? And it's just like, it's in here. It's kind of not good enough. When was the first time you felt not good enough? Like, go back to that first feeling. You remember, the man will close his eyes and he'll go to that moment. And in that moment, we'll reenact the scene, paint the scene. What did you see? Like, who's there? Who else is there? What are you feeling? How's it going? And the man will go to there. We recreate the scene, and we give the man an opportunity to step outside of himself and look at the scene, and then recreate it the way he would want it for himself now. So the man he is now, telling the boy then that it's okay, that you're just doing the best job that you can. You had to do this to survive.
And that's something that any listener of this podcast can do, isn't it?
Completely. Like, any man can look at his own shadow, take a look at like where these stories have come from, and if he's in an environment which is safe, which is like the biggest thing, is like, we talk about creating a container. And in the group, our first year or two, all we were doing, we didn't know how to process. We were practicing. It was just building container, creating a space that's safe. So when the men come in, they're just like, oh yeah, these men are opening up. They're sharing this. I'm okay to share this. This is okay, right? This is okay. Yeah, we're good.
Creating that container is obviously a very, very important thing. But at the end of the day, even if we have to do it in solitude, there are some of these guys might be listening to this, might be in what they think is an impossible situation to create that. But at the end of the day, we can always go to a place on our own, or if we have somebody online, you had people online that helped you get into that container. At the end of the day, wherever any guy is at, even if they're at their rock bottom, or if the floor is still falling from underneath them, they can go to that safe place and begin that journey, can't they?
Completely. Yeah, we all have a place that we can get to inside, whether through meditation or movement, yoga, or sports, or whatever that is that gets you to that zone where you feel safe or powerful.
Oh, I love that. The idea of safe and powerful being almost synonyms in this, or related to each other, which doesn't always happen, but the idea of safe and power being related to each other, that is a very insightful thing.
Yeah.
I want to, and maybe we can keep going on that point, but I want to kind of circle as we close. The group right now, thriving, safe to say?
Yeah, it is thriving. We're at 15 men in this closed circle for the winter, and it's been COVID, so it's we've had limitations on the way we meet and how we're meeting now.
Yep.
But we're all keeping within safe protocols for our meetings.
Sure.
But yeah, 15 men at this point.
I'm pleased to hear that. And as we start to kind of move to closing and the idea of safe and power, all that, do you have for any guys who are maybe starting to take these first steps of introspection, of wanting to climb out or to get better or to soar even, do you have any steps, any tangible things that they can do to help them on their journey?
Wow. I would say to look out into your community and to see if there are any supports in place right now. To look and for me to look for other men just to surround yourself with that are similar, that are on a similar path to you,
Mhm.
and to find that support through them. I went through custody court, and when I went through there, I was by myself, and it was one of the most harrowing experiences as a man. Like, you know, she had all her supports on her side, and I was completely by myself. And since that had happened 6 years ago, I've been to family court over a dozen times, and I've
Oh,
had
shit.
men just, I don't even know, just messaging me and being like, "Hey, I heard that you went family court. Do you think you could come with me on one of the days?"
Yep.
So really, I think just asking for the support. Just for me, the first thing was just putting myself out there and just saying that, hey, it's like just at just being vulnerable enough to be able to ask for support. Just whether it's like through a friend, a parent, whoever that is, you know, just maybe practicing one act of vulnerability, maybe just a
Mhm.
day, however that looks to you, like doing something that might make you, that makes you a little uncomfortable.
Oh man, that's a great task. I mean, imagine if in a month you, a man, I was mindful enough. Okay, I'll use an I statement like you were talking about earlier. Like, if I was mindful enough to um, intentionally make one act of vulnerability every day for an entire month and document that,
Mm,
I wonder where my thinking would be at the end of the month versus at the beginning of the month. And that's a really interesting idea. The idea of doing something every day to be a little bit vulnerable.
yeah. And that could be as small as just a smile at somebody that you don't know, a complete stranger.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It doesn't have to be putting yourself completely emotionally out there. Just a little bit outside of your comfort zone, something you might not do regularly.
I appreciate your words. We are going to close it up here, and but before I do, I want to get one more question in for you. But before I do that, it's going to sound like I never, when I talk about what the app is doing. Part of the podcast is also to inform people out there where he changed its at in its life cycle and what's happening. And you've hit a couple of the pain points that are out there. So I just want to let everyone know is the founders of He Changed It are talking to they've got talking to a few different lawyers. And in the resource section, and I don't know when this thing is going, but if you look at the resource section, there's a bunch of resources in there for all the fitness modalities that we talk about, you know, soul fitness, social fitness, mental, physical, all of them. And one of the things that's there is child custody and family and rights within the family and things like that. And um, we want to be a place where we have resources for men so they can actually say, oh, okay, if I look here, here are my rights.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people are Googling divorce and they have no idea what their rights might be. So these are things that we want to put in the resource section. The other thing that we are striving to be is this place that Ganesh is talking about. It's the idea that somebody can go into a room, they can turn on the anonymous toggle if they want to, or they just have a username, that's all they have, and they can say, hey, anybody have any experience with custody battles, things like that? I just got served papers. I'm scared as fuck. I don't know what I'm gonna do. And
Yeah.
and the idea of the app, and I'm gonna bounce this off of you. Maybe you could respond to this part of it, Ganesh. The idea of the app, which I can't believe it. This was thought of by two women, but I can, because they're both mothers and they're scared about the world that their sons are going to inherit.
Really.
They came up with the idea that men can come here and they can take what they need and they can leave what they have. And I see you right now as a guy who has a lot and you're willing to leave it like a motherfucker. You're willing to leave it like here, like talk about all of these things, being vulnerable to child rights, you know, very emotional to very logistical things. And I think about that, and it's like when you're leaving advice about these sorts of things, that's you being vulnerable too. But it's easier almost to be vulnerable when you're giving advice rather than asking for advice sometimes. But it's really the same emotion, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, you're still putting yourself out there. You're still sharing, but you're completely great. correct. Like men love giving advice. So it's so easy for us to offer up what we already know and have an experience and maybe something that we've already gone through. Because I think we, as humans and as men, like we really do want to share our experience, like our struggles, because eventually in the moment, the struggle is so real. But when we get through the struggle, it's just like we can look back and we can be like, oh yeah, that was an experience. And those experiences, I feel like it's our duty as men to share them with other men for them to know, hey, you're not alone. You're not the only one going through this. Like there's been countless other men, because when I'm in it, I feel like I'm the only one that's going through this. Like I feel like I'm all alone here, but I'm not all alone. There's a tribe of men out there. They're doing these, they're having these same struggles.
There's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah.
And to anybody who's going through anything right now, I can pretty much guarantee you that it's not the first time that it's happened, even though it may feel that way. Mm-hmm. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, completely. And it's not lasting forever. It's not going to be, even though it seems that way.
Yeah. Ganesh, I appreciate you so much. And I told you it was going to fly by. And I think you and I knew that when we first had our first phone call, that it was going to fly by. I appreciate you very, very much for everything that you're doing in your community. I appreciate you having this awakening and not just hoarding it to yourself, but being able to share it to others. I'm going to invite you, especially when the podcast drops, I'm going to reach out to you and let you know. So it would be so good to have you and some of your, some of the guys in the circle, maybe be there inside. He changed it a little bit. I'm going to tap you for that a little bit. And maybe we can do some Q&A down the line as this thing starts to blow up a little bit. I think you have a lot of advice to give. I know I've got Candy already. Candy's already reaching out to the Mankind Project to see what we can do as far as collaboration, and maybe resources can go into the app. I'm really optimistic for the future, and I think you are too. It sounds like you are too.
Yeah, I definitely am. The future is bright right now. I think for men and men's work where we're at in our time, this is our time. This is our time for men to be men and to redefine what that looks like.
Yeah, to rewrite the code. I like that idea. Redefine who we are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My man. Thank you so much. Is there anything that you want to throw out there on social media or anything about the group or anything, or is there any parting words that you have before we finish up here?
I think there are MKP groups, groups involved in a lot of towns and a lot of cities, and it's starting to grow up bigger in the interior.
Yeah.
And I also want to just, if those groups aren't there, I also want to I just want to encourage men to find other men that they can share with. And even if you just have one brother that you can share with, I think once you start doing that, it's going to start, that butterfly effect or ripple effect is going to start spreading out, and you're going to find your tribe. Like we all have our people, our tribe out there. And I think it's really important that we find them.
Very rarely could I say it better myself, and this is another one of those situations. You said that beautifully, and I appreciate it very much. Look at that. It happens so quickly. They start and then they finish. Another episode of heCast is in the can, as they like to say, even though we don't have cans anymore. Another episode of heCast is sitting in the digital wasteland, ready to be deployed. And I just want to say how grateful I am, Ganesh, for you being here today. I want to say thank you to all of our viewers and listeners for this podcast. I would ask that you subscribe so you can hear the content. I would also ask that for the men out there to download He Changed It. We're going full steam ahead. I know that we're not, the app is not in a place where there's a paywall yet. There's always going to be a bunch of free stuff, and then there's always going to be a paywall and stuff on the other side. Well, for men who sign up now, they're going to have a lifetime for He Changed It. So if you want to download the app, now's the time to do it. It's growing leaps and bounds in features. It's growing leaps and bounds in users. And we are really excited about this because guys like Ganesh are